I've now hit the button. We're now officially recording. Today we're sitting down with Randy Snelling with Keller Williams out of Hanover, New Hampshire, based out of Thetford, Vermont, currently, correct? Yep.
Correct.
And well, thanks for coming in. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I mean, it's great. Our relationship, I've gotten to know you over the past several months and couple of years, actually, but and then be able to see Dale again, which has been it's been a long time.
Yes. Yeah. So just to kind of explain the format for today, my interest for the layout of today's podcast is to have you ask Dale questions, because I have been so incredibly fortunate to work with Dale, to learn from him. And I feel that something that I want this podcast to put into the zeitgeist or the real estate world as a whole is a lot of information that Dale has, the knowledge that he's gained over the years. So I know I'm actually really happy to see you're prepared today. You have a list of questions and things that you want to talk about. So I would love to pass it over to you, and I'm just here to contribute.
No questions that'll stump me, though. I can't.
The unstumpable Dale Bromley.
Well, I'm happy it seems prepared, but this was actually put together today at the property inspection.
Hey, that
was
works.
in the meantime, because I was like,
Good.
you know what? Why not?
That's when you think that's. I think some of the best preparation comes from when you're about to go into something, because you're like, all right, I'm jazzed, I'm energized, I'm ready to rock and roll.
Well, yeah, and I haven't had a lot of opportunity. One thing that some people may or may not be aware of with real estate is that not everybody is always comfortable with.
I'm just going to tilt this a little bit.
Not everybody's comfortable with always talking about the ins and outs of real estate, because I mean, we are our own independent businesses to some extent, and we do always try to, if we have something that's working for us, it's not always easy to share that with other individuals. So be able to have somebody with the amount of experience that you've had over the years, and to be able to take the time to really just sit down and chat about real estate. So no, I appreciate it. Thank you.
So if you want to go ahead through your list, I'd love to hear what your first couple questions are.
Yeah. So I think I will just start with the one that Dale and I actually talked a little bit about just before we had hit record. But with real estate, I think I haven't met a lot of people that have just said, you know, hey, I graduated high school and got directly into real estate. A lot of people have different pathways that have led them to this. And one thing that I was thinking about is, you know, what were jobs that you had prior? And also, is there a job specifically that you felt like really influenced your ability to take on real estate and the nuances that kind of come with that?
That's a great question. I go way back, of course. I've been doing real estate for 45 years, I think now. But previous to that, I moved up to New Hampshire in 1978. Didn't have a lot of education, but I've always been what I call myself a peddler. I've always sold something. I started with shoes many, many years ago. I'd go door to door with shoes at 12 years old, that kind of thing.
Wow. Okay.
So
like
then,
parents cobbler, or were you just?
No, they were just nap shoes that I got over the internet, and I sold them to all my neighbors, that kind of thing. So I've always done something in sales, and I've always liked to relate to people, meet with people. But then along the way, I got married and had a couple of children, and my wife and I started a huge ski shop down in Goshen, New York, which was a very successful operation. But that, again, was selling retail.
Yeah.
And then my wife and I went through a divorce, and I moved to New Hampshire with friends and decided, because I didn't have a lot of education or a lot of background in businesses, a lot of background in entrepreneurial kind of things, that I should sell real estate. So I started I got my license in New Hampshire, started with an old friend of mine down in New Hampton, down on Route 104, and he's still my best friend, and it was called Conkling Real Estate, and we started together, and I think the first property we sold was well over $1 million on Lake Winnipesaukee, and I thought, I like this business. I can.
Oh yeah, for your first sale?
I can deal with this,
Oh yeah.
But then I think the next year I made $5,000 or something like that. So
the highs and lows.
That's my basic background, and then ended up coming over to Vermont in around 2000, and of course licensed in both states. So been fairly successful in this Upper Valley area on both sides of the river.
Nice. And I was curious about, so I know licensing has kind of gone through an evolution. I mean, were you a broker at the time was it just broker's license, or they've always been the sales agent's license too with it, or?
When I came, there was a reciprocity. I had my license in New York.
Right.
And I didn't do much with it. But so when I came up, it was easy enough to get my license in. I just had to take the exam before New Hampshire, so I got my broker's license right away there.
Nice. Okay.
And I didn't get my broker's license in Vermont until 2000.
Yeah.
But I'm now a broker in both states. And Darren and I have been talking about that, and he's trying, I think you plan to get your broker.
I'm taking the broker's course this coming September.
Yeah.
Which will be great for Vermont specifically. And I mean, as far as coming from the ski shop, Dale, I know you've told me personally that was a large lesson in reputation, in how people perceive you, and what your perception in an area is. I'd love for you to tap on that a little bit, because I don't think enough realtors nowadays think about that with social media and the various elements of the fact that we're in the public eye all the time. Even like us going to lunch, we're always in the public eye, even if we're just sitting at a table shooting the shit at lunch.
Friends barbecue on a weekend.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, like how I before we get back to the point I just asked you to contribute on, Dale, I was driving by a friend of ours' house on Chase Hollow Road and saw a red Jeep and was like, I think that might be Randy's truck. And it turned out that was the day we connected to help you get something printed. And so even when people see our vehicles in yards, it's that type of perception. But I know that from the ski shop, you learned a couple different things.
Well, I guess what I learned is that I've said this just the other day that what I'm going to put on my gravestone is be kind and do good.
Mm-hmm.
And
those are great words.
I've tried very hard to do that, and I think in our other podcasts we've touched on how important reputation is and how important ethics are.
Yes,
and I just can't emphasize that enough. It's just, and I think I've always maintained a pretty good reputation, and that works well, because people say, geez, I dealt with Dale and he was great. And
well, exactly.
You should deal with him. You know?
Word of mouth goes so far in this business.
Oh, and long after you have that experience, too. I mean, there are people that contact, like you're saying, you're still best friends with this individual. There's people that you're still in touch with from the ski shop days, from Sandwich, New Hampshire, which is where he started practicing real estate in New Hampshire.
Yeah. I still, not long ago, did a referral on a property over in Sandwich, and I haven't been there since the late 80s, so it was good. It was about a $700,000 property, so it worked out well for me.
Yeah.
For an old friend. You know.
I love that part about real estate, is how you can really build those relationships with past clients if there's that continued interest there. I mean,
yeah, and this may come up later, but what I've always tried to do is, and I know Darren does a lot of this, is that give that 110%.
Yeah.
If you need your house cleaned out, we'll get it done for you. If you need this done, you need a ride somewhere, you need this done. I can handle that for you.
Yeah.
And
I think I've established that kind of reputation that we kid around and say that they always used to say that Dale Bromley was the broker of last resort, because he could get the job done. You know?
Yeah, well, I mean, why not? When you've had opportunities, when you've gone door to door to sell shoes or the ski
cold calling, the definition of cold calling.
You're like, hey, I can move some junk.
Do you
out
need
of the car.
shoes? You likely have shoes. Do you need shoes?
Yeah, when you've gone through that type of stuff, mowing a lawn, helping people clean out a barn, I mean, it feels.
I had 27 lawns that I mowed as a kid, and that's how I still love doing it.
Yeah.
Please continue, Randy. I'm just making sure.
So, I mean, just because we are sort of on it about how reputation has been a huge part of how you've been able to be successful, and you've grown the name that you've had today, that you do today. Is there any other parts that you felt, have been really crucial for you just throughout real estate, and has been beneficial for the success that you've had?
I think, Randy, just meeting and greeting people and staying close to people, and that's the thing, that if I lack anything, it's not staying in enough contact with people that have been clients of mine. I try hard, but I don't do a good enough job at it. But I think that's so important, to stay in touch with people that you've had a relationship with, and either as a buyer or as a seller, and it just comes back in so many ways to make it happen again with someone else.
Yeah. No, and that is, I'm happy that you said that it's an area you feel like you could always be improving on, because I found it be difficult at times. I mean, there's those clients that you just for somehow naturally connect with and are able to continue that relationship years beyond the closing, while there are others that are more they got their own things going on, and it is a little bit harder to always stay connected with them. But there is a lot of value. I mean, just
I think the personal contact is so important. If you're going down the road and there's somebody who sold something to a couple, just drop in and say hi. I think that it's so much better than an email or a phone call.
I think we may have covered this on the podcast. I know I've discussed it with you, Dale. I'm not terribly woo-woo. I'm not like, mystical or into like the universe in an exorbitant way. But I do believe there is something to when you think of somebody, they might be thinking about you. So I will very regularly send out a text or an email or just a message saying, hey, I thought of you today. I hope you're doing great. Let me know if I can ever be of assistance. And more often than not, those people have said, funny, I was just thinking of you today. I drove by such and such property. I just got something in the mail. And that, again, I'm not woo, I'm not mystical, but there's something to that gut instinct of like, I just thought of that person and I should reach out.
Of course, when I started, we didn't have cell phones or
CRMs
text or
like the consumer relationships managers that we as newer agents are using on a daily basis, which is something I wanted to just touch on real quick because you're mentioning something that you wish you had done or something that you think you could have done a better job with. A modern tool to supplement that is called a CRM, something like Close, CLOZE, which I use personally, that tracks your correspondences, tracks the people you're interacting with, texts, phone calls, emails, and then tells you how long it's been since you've spoken with somebody. Or, you can really look back. For me, it's most important to look back and see the full conversation I've had with somebody. So I'm not leaving out things or asking repetitive questions. That in itself is just an efficiency tool.
It's a great tool.
It is, yeah.
And that's something we didn't have, and I wish I had at that time, back in those days.
Yep.
We had an old MLS book that we used to kind of show the customer when he came through the door and pick out something and say, go take a look at this if you'd like. Go drive down the road and take a look at it.
Yeah. Right. Imagine printed directions exclusively.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's amazing how much the real estate business has just transitioned with how easy electronics are and capabilities of getting online. I mean,
well, but the other thing is, in those days, 20 years, we didn't have the competition that we have now. I mean, there's a huge amount of competition up and down the valley, and as you guys know, I mean, it's just building a brand, I think, is the most important thing to do now. And I sort of did that over the years, but if I were starting out again now, I would concentrate on that fully, is building my brand.
Something I've been working on. Yeah. And do you feel so we definitely don't speak of specific brokerages besides like you work with Sotheby's, you work with Keller Williams. Have you felt that there are opportunities for you as a newer agent to start developing your own brand? I've seen something, Randy the Realtor is something that you're starting to lean into. That's great.
Yeah.
Something similar to like, another realtor in our territory, Holly Hall. She has the Call Holly Hall. It's something that kind of sticks in the brain. Is that your goal with Randy the Realtor?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So it came to be when I started to think about there's not a lot of realtors on the radio anymore, right? So,
true.
So one of the ones that always stands out to me is Vanessa Stone when she has her ads, and that's when I was like, hey, I have some funds for advertising that I want to, and I want to brand myself more, and that is one thing I've enjoyed about Keller Williams, Coastal Lakes and Mountains Realty so far in Hanover is that they are very motivated on, they understand the benefit of individual agent branding and how we really are our own business, and that yes, there is the entity of the brokerage, but at the end of the day, the one-on-one interactions with the clients are between us and the clients. So with that branding, Randy the Realtor came to be with the radio ad, and cool. A lot of people heard it. I was very surprised.
Sure they did.
And
what stations? What?
Yeah, so 100 Kicks 100.5, and it was also 92.5 The River, I think.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's hard to know where the market is. Like we have the country and western station up
WYKR.
WYKR, and I never thought. It's a great station, and I know the owners very well, or the previous owner, but I never thought that was going to bring me the market that I wanted to be in. I wasn't sure. At one time, I thought I would advertise on Vermont Public Radio, and I looked into it as a brand, as Dale Bromley, part of, at that time, McLaury Real Estate. and I think it was $8,000 for it. And I said, "Whoa, I don't think I want to do this right now."
Yeah.
Just couldn't afford it.
Well, that is the thing. Yeah, I was very surprised with the cost of it. But
Was it high?
It was, yeah. It was relatively high in my opinion at where I am right now. But it really did work with brand recognition. I mean, I'm no longer running the ads for the month of August, but 3 months of having it out there. First, initially, it was just a tagline off from a giveaway that they were doing.
Cool.
And then after that, the individual ads for specific targeting for buyers and sellers. And yeah, I mean, a lot of people, I went to some weddings already this year, and they're all like, "Hey, Randy, the Realtor." So
Oh, good. See,
friends
that's
and stuff,
cool.
So.
That I would say that is proof of concept.
Yes, yeah.
The fact that somebody at a wedding said to you the thing that you put out in the universe, that is a perfect proof of concept. That's awesome.
I think we used to talk about on the radio, we would do a free market analysis, and that used to make the phone ring.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of folks don't recognize that, or maybe some realtors charge for them, but the agents that are truly competitive and looking for your business are not charging for market analysis. You know, we're always happy to do one because we want to be an asset, we want to be a source of information, and we ultimately want to work with you.
Yeah, and what not everybody realizes too is how much time. Like, yes, we can do some quick ones at times,
Right.
but if you are doing a true market analysis, I mean, it can take a couple hours, if not longer, depending on the property and how unique the features are.
So just to ask you a question before we go back into your list of questions,
Sure.
are you finding that finding values for property is becoming more difficult with how kind of out of the ordinary everything is?
It's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be easier, yes. Like, it is challenging at times, and I think for me personally, I've just decided on being conservative, but then also very transparent about what the market is currently like with my sellers. And at the end of the day, it is nice that, you know, we represent them, so it is their decision. We're just here to guide them in a way. So you give them the price range of what you feel like it could fall within, and then thankfully it is, you know, somebody else's choice to finally, and then you just work with them to adjust from there. But it is tough. I mean, just with how little inventory, there's a lot of individuals that need to be in the area for a job or family needs or health-wise. So, you know, they're willing to pay some of the premiums at times to really be able to lock in an offer.
Yeah, it's tough. It's definitely, I mean, what we've been seeing is that it's making higher values more possible in the realm of the CMA report, but we're very concerned about that not serving our clients, actually working against them. And that's been tough to balance, because we don't want to feel like we're doomsdayers or naysayers or anybody that's really, you know, down on our region or our industry. However, there are situations. We were just at lunch looking at a few listings, and we're both saying, what the hell? I mean, I'll be brutally honest. We were both just looking at a listing and saying, how? We're looking at a price, and we're saying, how do they arrive at this figure? We can kind of deduce how we think they arrived at that figure based on some other regional stuff that's going on where this listing happens to be, but it's still like really kind of crazy.
Yeah, I think some of those properties now we're realizing are sitting on the market for a year.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, some of them even 2 years. Wow. And so somebody's got to start. Some of the realtors have to start realizing that it's time to stop doing this. It's time to stop pricing them way above where they should be.
We have. We've been, I mean, we're not like, you know, some driving force of the industry, but we are definitely working on, you know, hey, we get it. Everybody's saying you can get A, but the value really should be B.
Well, yeah, you have to be honest with them, because once again, at the end of the day, they're going to decide what they want to list for, and you can work with that, but you have to be transparent, because you have to set reasonable expectations. And if you don't do that, I mean, it's just a lot of miscommunication on both. It can just be an awkward situation throughout it, especially when you sit on the market for a year or two.
Yeah, and I think with us, what we try to do, at least I've tried to do, is say, look, we're happy to list this a little more than where it should be, but in 30 days we've got to review it.
Yes,
we've got to look at it.
We only had one
instance.
We had one instance where that did come back to bite us, but that's the only instance where it did. where we basically said, oh, we just need to confirm the price after a certain amount of time. And the seller actually turned around and was accusing us of driving the price down before we even had it on the market. And, again, not naming names or any locations, but just saying that this was an instance where we were really, that was at a time where we had just come off of the curve of you price it, it'll sell. Doesn't matter how you price it. It's just going to sell. So we were coming off that curve and seeing things start to hang. So we were then starting to say in all of our CMA appointments exactly what Dale said. We'll give it the shot where you want it to be. Yeah. But after 30 days or so, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to look at some data, and we're going to figure out the best way forward.
That's the great thing about our business is it's always a learning process. It's constant.
Yeah.
Daily, we learn
good
something.
and bad.
Yeah, good and bad.
In a way,
yeah.
yes.
No
absolutely.
question.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It was for actually an example in that is just the ever-changing world is an example of a house that we had seen and I was under contract with, and they had talked. There was a certain style of thermostat when we had viewed the property, and then we went back through recently. It had changed, and thankfully, it was actually just a maintenance thing that they were doing, but. It made me realize of like, do I have to start putting in my purchase and sales agreement specific thermostat readings, like whether it was a Nest or something like that for a thing? And
I was going to say, we both know.
We know about this.
Well, I was going to say, let's talk about a personal situation you had with a water heater. Think about the cottage on the river.
Well, it's sort of apart from. But
it's an extreme example, but it's a relevant example.
Yeah, we went to have a closing on a cottage on the river, and all of a sudden there was no hot water, and the seller had removed the hot water heater because there was something wrong with it. And so I called him and I said, "Are you going to replace? Aren't you going to?" He said, "No, that's it. Which you see what you get what you see," and so he never did replace it. And
wow.
We ended up, as the realtor, and it was sort of a family matter too, we ended up spending quite a bit of money to put a new hot water heater in.
But the confirmation of what will be there, what won't be there, I mean, that's something we've also gotten really savvy in our listing appointments, just kind of feeling out like, and so what do you plan on leaving? And because in our first couple, I think we had, in the first episode of the podcast specifically, I had just come off of some big clean outs. So it was very much top of mind. So I mentioned, insert link to podcast here. We were very much just discussing that aspect and how much stuff was being left behind in listings. But that's, again, not to reiterate and not to draw away from too much, but I do enjoy that we both have a lot of stories of things that have changed right before.
I've been so concerned about Darren. He's done so many clean outs that I'm thinking he's going to leave real estate and go in the clean out.
But there is a lot of money in that these days. Yeah.
Oh, you know how many agents we see reach out in our email threads that say, I need a clean out? I don't email them, Dale, by the way. Anybody, please feel free to comment and testify. I've not emailed you to clean out your house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You get some good stuff though sometimes.
I know. I've gotten some gifts, and we've actually, my wife and I have a little side business of just, the possessions. We do the Memorial Day yard sale. Yep.
I did one some years ago up in on Lake Groton, and as a lovely elderly lady, and she had an extremely ornate organ. It was all kinds of filigree on it and everything. And so we had at the time, there was a fellow that did clean outs from here in Bradford, and he went up to look at it and he said, I can't even take that. He said, I'd be stuck with that. I would never sell it. And I thought, well, what am I going to do with that organ?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I talked him into taking it, and not 2 or 3 days later, he got that in his shop and sold it for $2,800.
Wow, yeah.
You never know.
You never know.
Back to you, my friend, please. Yeah, please lead the
I
charge.
keep interrupting you, and I.
No, I love this. Like, I wanted 10 questions, and I had 5 prepared. So I was hoping that this would bring up good conversation.
You're good.
So far, it has.
No, this is great.
So you had already actually shared when you first got into real estate, and one of the things actually was interesting. What is one of the first things your broker had you do when you got? I know you were. Did you start off as a broker?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what was one of the first things you did, or somebody suggested you do to start gaining business?
Well, he was not a kitchen broker, but he'd been in it a long time, and I think what he impressed upon me was the ethics, which we've touched on. I mean, we were so aware of that. But what we liked to do, he and I, we did a lot of land in those days, and we would just get together in the morning, and we'd go out and walk 100 acres, and I learned an awful lot about land from doing that. I learned a lot about, there was an old surveyor over in that area that I used to work with, and I would call him and say, can you go out and show me where the marks on that tree should be? And so I just, from physically looking at properties, I learned a tremendous amount early on in the game, and it stayed with me for years. We did something the other day and together, and I said, look for a mark over here. You might see the tree marked or not marked or whatever. I forgot. We were somewhere looking at land.
Yeah.
So.
And a kitchen broker, for anybody who doesn't know, is somebody that practices without a license, basically around their kitchen table, negotiating and
he was not a kitchen broker.
No, your mentor was
in
not
that era that there were a lot of kitchen brokers around
before it was as illegal as it is today to practice without a license. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did a lot of that when I first started too, Dale. We would go to properties and either drive around lots or walk lots and just kind of like look at things. I think one of the other really valuable pieces when I was starting out with Dale was he would show me all these things that he'd sold and tell me stories about them, and it started to imprint this web mentality where everything is connected in some form or fashion, even if it's just the fact that you've driven by a property a dozen times. And that's something that has carried forward as far as my ability to tell stories and also to give people a sense of place when speaking to a property, what it's near, how you can get here when the road is out, how do you get here? That's something that was very valuable.
Yeah.
And, contacts are so important. I guess in those days when I started, I would go out to lunch, and I still pretty much do this. I'd go out to lunch every day. And
that is actually, just something Darren's always
and in those days it wasn't as expensive as it is now.
Sure.
But I would always meet someone and hand them a card, and it came back to me so many times. And so I tried to just be out and about a lot of the time and meeting and greeting people.
Well, that's what I'm hearing from you is that even with the land surveying or the land walking and talking with the surveyor is just all in person, a lot of talking and that connection.
And the surveyor will call you in 6 months and say, and this happens to me a lot there's a forestry company in the area that calls me quite frequently and said, I'd like you to put a value on Randy's property over in East Corinth or something. So it happens quite a bit.
Yeah, contacts. I mean, that's something to definitely because people, it's everybody and anybody. It's relatives, it's friends, and I think when you don't put an air of desperation behind it, it attracts so much more attention. There are so many things that I'll see, like somebody will post something on social media that's somewhat ASCII, I guess it's not a proper verb, but it's very, or adjective. It's very, you can just kind of tell like, oh, they're looking to get something out of this. Whereas what I try to do with anything, especially in our advertising endeavors, is offer something. Here is something that this is a listing we can give you. Here's I'm willing to work with you. We don't advertise the free CMA thing as much anymore because we're not really needing to, but it would be something in a slow season where I'd say, hey, social media, free CMAs, rather than asking for business, offer something to court that business.
It feels a lot more genuine, I feel like.
I think what I did, and I don't do it so much anymore, and Darren and I have chatted about this, and he's done a lot of it, is I became a joiner. I would get in the chamber, and I would go to speak in front of Rotary groups and other groups, and so that it built a lot of contacts that way.
And you can speak to that, Randy. You're part of the Upper Valley Board.
Yes, and that is actually one of my questions too, Dale, was about if you've had any involvement at state levels too. But so I mean, one thing that you're talking about with staying in connection with individuals that may have not been necessarily clients, but more of just resources, whether it's surveyors, inspectors, or appraisers, is one of the parts that I actually have enjoyed about this job as well. Is it gives you a sense of community that I don't think is always there. It can be very individual, and you see other agents at showings, but it's not always a lot of interacting unless you're going into the office regularly. So for myself, I've enjoyed getting to know those inspectors that it's like every single time, or even seeing you today, Dale, is like coming in, it's like, Dale, it's been a long time. Like
Old
you
home
have
day.
somebody that, you feel like you can really, just relax with and be around because you're seeing these people every day. You're going through the same things for the most part, and there's that camaraderie. And moving into what Darren had said a little bit about, I am the president of the Upper Valley Board of Realtors. We're mainly located out of Enfield and the surrounding towns, but I've enjoyed that as well because it it brings a lot of our local realtors in the area are a part of the Upper Valley Board, and I get to see everybody. I mean, at least 4 times out of the year, if not more, when we're doing other events, and you give back to the community for one, which is really nice. But then once again, just that camaraderie of being around other agents, you get to kind of talk about what your day has been like, what you're experiencing. It kind of fills that void of
it does. And one of the things that I did, and I think you guys both do this, I know Darren does this, if a new agent comes on board, a new associate comes on, I always would go to them and say, how can I help? You call me tonight and let me know what you need to know for that meeting tomorrow, and I'll help you out with that. And it's come back to me in spades, where people have referred business to me because I helped them out a couple of years ago. It just, I think, makes a huge difference.
Well, and when you speak to the sense of community, I think my contribution on that is that I feel we're moving away from the constant focus on competition. I think we're moving into like something that Dale has been really great about through my time working with him is that whenever anybody mentions other realtors, we're always like, oh, they're great. They're great.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who it is. Doesn't matter what the party is, what our experience with them. Oh, they're great. Well, good person. And we never, ever toss names around, use other brokerages as examples. We just don't. Because at the end of the day, while we are all technically competitors, I don't like feeling that way. I like having people come to showings and it's like, hey, it's so great to see you. Or, oh, I saw this one under contract. Congratulations. Even if you have a buyer that missed out on it, I feel that sense of community is really where the most value is, because then you're playing with like players.
Yeah.
Everybody's.
We did something when Darren first started. I suggested that he call the top producer, let's say, in the Upper Valley, and just get together and have lunch with him. And you did that.
Yeah. We
had coffee with him or something.
Yeah, had coffee.
That.
And just that learning.
Well, someone that you thought that I should exemplify in
Right.
in certain aspects of their business was the main reason for reaching out to that individual. I wouldn't mind saying their name, but I won't. But it's definitely something that I had some valuable conversations. I got some valuable information, but I also saw some things that were not how I was going to do my business.
Well, isn't that the enjoyable part of it too? Is you get to pick and choose what feels right to you and how you really want to operate, which is enjoyable. It's a tough learning curve at times of how you want to, what really sits well with you, but it's fun. At the end of the day, I mean, you learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have a lot of control over your day.
Yeah.
Which is also very nice because you can spend, in this profession, there's a lot of, it can feel like you're wasting a lot of time, but mostly those are appointments that are dictated for us. Whereas when it comes down to actually like prospecting and doing the things that you want to do, like participating in charitable organizations or giving your time to a board or any organization, that pays back in spades. And then also it's a way that you're contributing to the community, therefore making your area hopefully better through your contribution, which I'm always, I think that we're so fortunate to be in this part of the country that I can only hope it just keeps getting better across the board.
And I think it's so important today, have a great relationship with attorneys and financial institutions. I know Darren does that with a couple of financial institutions, and it's just so neat to be able to call somebody and say, I'm in a jam here. I need you to help me out. We need to close this within 2 weeks or something.
Yeah.
To get somebody that's able to do that.
Well, and to feel like you're not bugging them. I think that's really big. Like somebody that you can actually call and they're like, yeah, let's talk through this right now. Not just, hey, what can I do to you do for you? Get off the phone kind of stuff.
Yeah, we have definitely seen the professionals that don't want to play nice or don't treat our people well work their way off of lists very quickly. And I think that's the way that every realtor should practice. I mean, no matter what the prior relationship is, as soon as somebody starts mistreating a client or customer, there's just no excuse for that. Even on our worst days, we can handle the 6 nonsense phone calls in a row and still not end up tongue lashing anybody. We do not have that case with all professionals we work with, but
it's not an easy trait, but
it's not.
When you are able to smile and nod, and just be able to separate yourself a little bit from it. It
is high stakes. I've had a few lately, just to kind of divert us off. I've had a few lately where realtors are almost in tears over things. And I honestly can relate.
Oh,
I texted another agent the other day and was like, if this falls through again,
Yeah,
I am not ashamed to say I will cry, like, because it's just. And Dale saw this the other day. Somebody calls me and is crying on the phone about a situation that's transpiring. That I can see how whipped up everybody is because of that. Because we're all kind of dealing with it. We were just
we do, and I never cried, but I get that knot in my stomach.
Oh, yeah. When you're just like, I don't want any food. You don't really want to sit down. You're just kind of there.
Yeah. No, just existing and getting through the moment.
Yeah.
And we've had multiple situations like that where, especially things that are well outside of our control.
Yeah.
That's the thing that really hits home the most, because there's literally nothing you can do.
Oh, yeah. You
just
can't
have
be
to.
upset. I mean, there's no benefit of being upset about the situation when it didn't go the way that you hoped or something like that. It's just like, okay, what can I do to get through this? Take a
No,
deep
what's the
breath,
only way forward?
Yeah,
How
exactly.
We had one we talked about on this podcast where a closing was supposed to happen, and the day before it fell through. And in all reality, the only thing to be done, rather than crying over spilled milk and lost time, was to start contacting parties that we
Just move on.
start putting another one together.
Yeah.
Because the only way forward is through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know we're working on trying to neaten these up, but we're having great conversation here, so please don't feel rushed at all. Did you have any? I think you said you had 5 total questions, and it feels like we're about 4.
Yeah.
I don't feel like you have to.
No, it'll be interesting to hear if there's one that really has stuck with you. But do you have a specific transaction that has, not needing property or anything like that, address, but more of that has really stuck with you, either for good or bad purposes?
Well, I won't tell you about the bad ones, but and I've had a few of those. But I've had some. I was sitting in a bar one night many years ago over on Lake Winnipesaukee, and I had a habit then of talking about listings that I was working on to someone who was sitting next to me, and some young fellow overheard me talking at the bar, and he said, "You're listing that property?" And I said, "Yes, I'll have it listed tomorrow morning." He said, "How much will it be?" And I said, "I think around $1.2 million, $1.3 million." And he said, "You be in my office at 8:00 tomorrow morning, and I'll have an offer for you." And I didn't even have it listed, which was the wrong thing to be talking about.
Yeah,
but he overheard me, and I went in his office, and we ended up putting a deal together for over $1 million soon after that. So that was and I've done a few of those like that.
Yeah.
They're kind of exciting to talk.
Just gonna say, what a great example though of just how important it is. I think there's a tremendous amount of value with realtors, and I don't think people always understand at times of beyond just the working through the ins and outs of a standard transaction is little things like that. I mean, just the timing of bringing something up of when you're not quite there yet on the market or something like that. I mean, there's a lot of ways that things can work out great for you, or
that's a great
other way.
Yeah.
Well, and to speak to any newer licensees or anybody listening that maybe doesn't have the experience that the 3 of us in this room do. So as long as the listing agreement is signed, you're technically not doing anything wrong.
Yes,
you're just speaking to upcoming business. It's very similar to somebody posting something like, "Hey, sneak peek on Facebook. This is going to go live tomorrow." You basically were doing a verbal sneak peek to a gentleman at the bar.
Yeah.
But that is something that is. I mean, we see that happen all the time. Just place, right time. Place and time, be them right or wrong, they just happen. We had that. I told this story of discovering a non-disclosure issue because I was in the right place at the right time. While it caused some havoc, it definitely was better to have it happen on the front end than the back end.
Exactly, and at the end of the day, you do it for your clients.
Yeah.
But that just it brings something to mind that we talk a lot about. I've talked a lot about $1 million property. But it's so important to be just as helpful with that $10,000 piece of land, because that seller may come back at you and say, "Well, now I've decided to sell my house down the road," kind of thing. So I've always tried to treat everybody, just treat them the same way and properly.
Well, and to speak to my hospitality background, the upper class really appreciates that. The amount of times that in hospitality I had people write rave reviews about me just because I treated them like every other person that I was speaking to, be them staff, be them guest, be them boss, be them whoever. The 1% is treated like some Aztec god sometimes, walking around. They're everyone's worshiping. "Oh, please tip me." And in hospitality, I would always just focus on, you're a person. I know this about you. I know that about you. that's all I know about you, so I'm not going to assume anything else.
Yes.
And that's exactly how I treat real estate. Same with showings. I mean, the only thing that we'll do that I would say is a little bit more than like hospitality is we have tools available to us realtors to make sure that we're safe.
Yes.
So we will run people to make sure that they're not a threat. You know, obviously we're not looking at every infraction in their history, but if somebody's, you know, a recent offender or some kind, you know, obviously we're being safe.
Yeah.
But still, I think that that's something that, especially with those $1 million properties, you can't go into a showing and they're going to tear you apart. They're going to rip the property apart. They're going to tear you apart. You have to, you're cool, you're calm, you're collected, and
you're confident.
You got $1 million listing, and here it is. You know, I think that's something I see a lot of licensees that seem very nervous.
Well, I mean, if you don't have somebody like Dale,
Oh, I know.
I was very happy to have Leela Tarantelli as like my mentor, just because it was somebody that I could rely on. I mean, you take their information and you do with what you want it. Like we talked about, we're all individual businesses, but just to be able to have somebody that says, oh yes, like that is, you know, to be expected, or no, that person is way out of line. I mean, it gives you that amount of confidence to be like, okay, I can get through this and I can be calm, because there's just so many areas and unique qualities to real estate. I mean, it's really just two people coming to an agreement about a variety of decisions. So you never know what to expect at times.
Well, and I've I've recently been repeating amicability is a two-way street. And the second it's lost, it is so hard to get back. So with every client and customer that I work with, I'm always looking at that amicability as like, what can I do to keep everybody happy, everybody friendly, everybody working towards the goal of closing this thing up? Because as soon as one person diverts, the whole thing is
yes, and you're very good at that. You do that very well.
It's the hospitality background.
Well, also I think that you have a very positive attitude, because at the end of the day, you can always assume that somebody is trying to do something to pull the wool over your eyes, or something you don't want to agree with. But at the end of the day, what value do you really get from having that heightened feeling? It's like, no, just be assured that everybody wants the same things. We're going to get there, and if anything comes up, we'll get through it.
Yeah.
And I think that old axiom that you're always in charge.
Yeah.
Although they may not know it, you are in charge.
Yeah, even if we don't have the ability to control everything, we've discussed about in our profession, it is somewhat of a benefit that we're able to put our hands up in certain instances, such as inspections, such as legal affairs, and say, you have to talk to an attorney, you have to talk to a contractor. You know, we can defer, which is nice too, because we can still run the show while doing that appropriately and making sure that everybody's still well taken care of. But then that also does the whole fostering of the community around us. You know, that's something that if I were to give any advice, it's get a contractor, start feeding all your business through that contractor, and make it so that contractor will answer your phone calls, because that is so valuable. So
I can't emphasize enough, though, in presentations, if there's a question I don't know the answer to, I don't know.
Yeah,
but
it's okay to say I don't know. Yeah,
but I'll get it
don't
for
bluff your way through it.
Yeah, because they can. You never know what they know too, and it is.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Anything that is below the surface will come to light, and that's something that, you know, even from the start. I mean, we've had many a listing appointment where, you know, Dale will stop me and kind of, you know, say like, all right, we're getting in the weeds here. Maybe
I don't stop. I just put my hand on over here.
Yeah. Well, that's
there's a subtle thing. I mean, cute. He knows.
But most of what I'm doing though is usually disclosing like, well, these are all the pitfalls you want to avoid, and we don't need to get into that so early on, which is what Dale's usually saying. Like, we'll handle that.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple, stupid. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's great. Well, and I think so. To speak to your getting into real estate, so Leela really brought you into the business, didn't she?
No, well,
not really, actually. So Penny,
Penny.
Penny Lasciavo is my aunt. And originally, when I was in healthcare working in Hanover as a health coach, I realized the importance of being available, flexible, accommodating, and responsive. The value of that in the healthcare field. And so I knew, so Penny worked still does for Four Seasons Sotheby's International Realty, and I also had a friend, Shania Covey as well, that works for Shepherd Realty in Grantham, and both of them were individuals that I was just able to talk really candid about, of like, how's real estate going, what is there to expect, and as well as some other realtors in the area. But I would say it was Penny, because she was the connection with Sotheby's that had been able to like that was a very interesting thing for real estate with me, is that everywhere is kind of hiring, but very few are actually advertising or recruiting and things like that. So it was a more of you go around and interview brokerages and see who is going to offer you what you would like. And yeah, I mean, I was really thankful with Sotheby's because they just have a great, starting program with it. And I felt having people like Dale, Penny as well, and a friendly staff in there, just to be able to go in the office and feel comforted and having some guidance was really helpful.
I know Penny, as you know, quite well, and she would have been she is a wonderful role model too. She's good at helping and explaining things, and she started with McLaury right after I did, and I remember she was there for about a year, and she said, "I'm not doing this anymore. I can't make any money." And I said, "Penny, it will come. It will happen." And she worked it and worked her plan and planned her work, and today she's extremely successful.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So then I would like, because I guess I personally don't know. So then how did the relationship with Leela develop itself? Because ultimately you are now at Keller Williams, and is she the managing broker of the Hanover?
So not managing broker, but was the starter of our group, the Upper Valley Group.
She began that office basically.
Well, yeah, exactly, because it was they had been Keller Williams Coastal Lakes and Mountain Realty has been mostly on the eastern side of New Hampshire, and there is some KW in Vermont as well. But yeah, Leela was the one that started the group and was able to get the momentum to be able to get the office where the Pink Alligator used to be behind the Nugget Theater in Hanover. Anyways, the connection with Leela, though, was part of Sotheby's kind of transition for newer agents is the mentoring program. So being able to have a seasoned agent that is interested in mentoring a newer agent come on, and they work together with a few transactions. And it was actually, I had gotten my license in December of 2019, and I think I had only had it for maybe for a month total before the holiday party for Sotheby's. So it was held at the Dowds Inn in Lyme, and that's just when I was sat at the table with Leela and a few others, and after she had just said, I really enjoyed meeting you and talking with you, and if you ever are looking for a mentor or someone to talk with, just please let me know. I'm happy to do it. And that is how it all started. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that I wasn't mistaken in the fact that she is a mentor to you.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Because you did come on before my time, so I didn't get to see, obviously any of the processes before I was involved. Because I started with Dale in November of 2019, but I didn't get licensed until July of 2020.
Sure.
Because I was just doing clerical, and I was transitioning out of hospitality at the time.
Well, and that was COVID too as well.
Well, right. I got my license officially after COVID had started at that point, what I would call the pandemic period had started.
The ability to find someone to mentor you is just so important, I think, and we don't do enough of that. I know even at our company we don't mentor enough.
Yeah,
new associates coming in.
Well, that's why I love this environment, is just being able to just normalize the conversation around it, even though we are competitors at times.
No, and honestly, I don't think of it as competition, really. I think what it is there's so much market share, and everybody has the ability and knows so many people that they can connect with any number of parties. It's really just the doing it every day, enjoying what you're doing, and broadcasting that positive demeanor. Like you said, I mean, it's something that I sometimes to a fault. I'm always optimistic and trying to be as jubilant as I can be, just because it's it's really what we're kind of here to do, in my opinion. What's the point if you're not having fun? I mean, honestly, I mean, time is short, and I think that enjoying what you do is so critical, so critical. But well, I do feel like that's a good stopping point.
Did we?
Yes.
Did we hit your list?
All 5, and I'm so happy that they took the time too.
You got it. You didn't want it to be minute 5.
And be like so.
Thank you again for coming on today, Randy. It's been a delight.
Thanks. Good to chat with you, as always.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, guys. That was